What do you think the state legislature can do?
Well, we are definitely underfunding rural people's ability to have nutrition, get educated properly, and to have medical services. We let the private industries of hospitals conglomerate around a lack of money-paying rural clients. Now that those hospitals are now gone, who's in the receivership of all those patients and all those buildings and all that money that's now being subsidized? The same large hospitals that were there over it in the first place. So in order to temper a commercial endeavor that's supposed to be surrounding what is a human art or just an expression of kindness to the giving of medicine or information about how you should eat while you're pregnant. So those things, altruism does not solve. It doesn't. We have to take care of our people. And if we temper a business endeavor because of it, so be it. That's our job.
Welcome to another episode of Best of Johnston County, brought to you by Breeden Law Office. Our host, Jonathan Breeden, an experienced family lawyer with a deep connection to the community, is ready to take you on a journey through the area that he has called home for over 20 years. Whether it's a deep dive into the love locals have for the county or unraveling the complexities of family law, Best of Johnston County presents an authentic slice of this unique community.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Best of Johnston County Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Breeden, and today we have with us the candidate for NC House 26, Matt Wood. He's the Democratic candidate, will be on your ballot in November, and he's running against State Representative Donna White. This district keeps getting redrawn, but basically from 70 to 95 to the northwest quadrant. I know it's a lot smaller than that. Most of the district is now Clayton and Archer's Lodge and up that way as it keeps getting smaller as that district grows. For a long time, it was 70 and 95 were kind of the quadrant, but that's a general idea of where the district is. It's not quite that big now, but then he will be on your ballot come November as the Democrat nominee in the NC House 26 race. But before we talk to him, I do want to encourage everybody who's listening or watching or following this podcast to like, subscribe, or follow it wherever you're seeing it, whether it be on YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Instagram, wherever you're seeing this podcast. Be filled to like, subscribe, or follow this podcast so that you'll be aware of future episodes of the Best of Johnston County Podcast. The Best of Johnston County Podcast comes out every Monday, and we have lots of exciting guests, and we've had tons of exciting guests in the past, and we have even more coming up in the future. So be checking back every Monday. If you like and follow and subscribe, you'll be made aware of all of the episodes, and you'll see your friends and neighbors on this podcast all the time. We've had past guests, including Matt Wood's opponent, Donna White. We've had County Commissioner Patrick Harris, County Commissioner Ted Godwin, County Parks and Rec Director Adrian O'Neill, local dentist Tim Sims, Miss Teen America Hanley House. We've had a lot of great guests on here. We're going to have more great guests coming up in the future. And if you love Johnston County as much as I do, this podcast is for you. It would also be helpful if you leave us a 5-star review down at the bottom, wherever you're seeing this podcast, as that will help us gain our visibility so more people become aware of it. So anyway, now we'll get to the Apple episode and talk to Matt Wood. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. No problem. So anyway, it's the first time we've had a chance to meet here today. Tell the audience about who you are, where you're from.
So probably the most importantly, I've lived here in Clayton and Johnston County for about the last 25 years. I'm 54 years old. I'm originally from around the Newark, New Jersey, part of the United States, but I'm an American mutt. My dad followed where the jobs were, as Ronald Reagan told him to in the 80s. So I lived in Iowa, Illinois. My dad was a correctional officer. Ended up in South Carolina, where I finished my college education, and ended up here in the Raleigh area because after looking at every other place in the country, because my wife and I were both finished with our undergraduates, we were going to go to further our education. So we looked at Houston, San Diego, South Chicago, everywhere. This place had everything. So I'm glad to be here and working here, and I've got kids, and so I don't really think of a better place that I could be right now.
Oh, well, I can understand that. I think you graduated from Coastal Carolina down there in Conway, right. Myrtle Beach area. What was your degree in from Coastal Carolina?
So I have a bachelor's degree in government and political science because I've always been interested in the relationship between politics and regulation, how it affects people. Just as a kid, having that kind of strange hobby carried with me, but I've had a penchant for public address. I started out as a public speaker in high school. I did formal debate in college and competed on a collegiate level. And when I got to undergraduate, it turned into me doing Shakespearean theater. I was the master of ceremonies at Medieval Times when it opened up from 95 to 97. I was a horseman. I did commercials and everything else. So, I mean, I kind of ended up there, and Coastal was a nice place to end up. That's for sure.
I love medieval times. I've not been to the one in Myrtle Beach, but I did go to the one in Orlando.
Yeah.
About that same time in the 90s when that was coming along. And that was a lot of fun. And I think they still have it in Myrtle Beach.
Of course. Yeah. There's 5 castles. Of course, looking at me now, you were like, really? I had a beard. I had long hair. I was Sir Matthew William of the Wood. Right. So I've done stage acting, all kinds of stuff like that. So dual degree in drama and political science.
Well, the one time, and I guess I should go back and take my kids now, because I remember I've done the pirate show in Myrtle Beach twice now, the Dollywood production, which I really enjoyed both times. And I enjoyed medieval times the one time I went, because they had a sword eater. I don't know if they still have sword eaters. They had somebody that was eating fire. Yeah. They had pretty good sword play, they had the jousting and stuff.
Yeah. My son can attest to the fact that I know how to sword fight and teach him the offense and defense. I know how to joust because I rode the horses and worked in the show, as opposed to just being an actor, because I'd always played sports and it's fun. So sword fighting is fun. At medieval times, it's extra, so you get paid to do it. So
it's hard to believe I've not been to the one on Myrtle Beach, but I should go, because I think I've done the pirate show twice. So the next time I'm there, I'll need to do medieval times, because I don't think I've taken my kids to see that yet. Well, that's cool. So then I think at some point you ended up in the insurance business. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, I mean, after graduating with a liberal arts degree and moving up here and not wanting to move, my little 3-point GPA and BAs and this and that was not enough to get me into a law school. I mean, I did average on the law school entrance exam. I took it 3 times, got the same score. You know how that goes.
I took the law school entrance exam. I know how that goes.
Yes, sir. So Campbell, Duke, UNC, Central, very, very competitive schools. I knew I wasn't going to go that route because I liked this area. Wasn't willing to go to, Cooley School of Law or Thomas Jefferson out there. So I wasn't going to advance my education that way. And I worked for other businesses before, and I couldn't make enough money and have enough flexibility to have a family and enjoy my life unless I worked for myself. So I became 1099, got my insurance licenses, worked for brokerages, and found a very enjoyable life. I didn't get well off, for sure, but my kids know how to act right. They know how to write right. They know math, and they know that dad loves them, as opposed to me having these sales plaques on the wall. So that's insurance, Medicare, health insurance.
So who do you work for now?
So I work for a company called American Republic Insurance Services. That's out of Des Moines, Iowa.
Okay.
They underwrite their own paper as far as a Medicare supplemental and life insurance product is concerned. But I'm appointed by Blue Cross, Aetna, Cigna, United, any Medicare plan that's available, and health insurance as well. So I can, properly take somebody through. If I'm married to a particular company, I can't counsel somebody as well as I can.
Right.
Yeah. So it takes a little bit of work, but yes. So I've been doing that for almost 10 years now.
So you sell all types of insurance or just health insurance?
Well, I do health, Medicare. I really help navigate people through Medicaid, which that's a tougher thing. I do life insurances, IULs, some annuities and things like that, just to have a diverse sort of portfolio. But
so do you help people with Medicare Part B?
Well, I help them understand what they're supposed to be doing. See, now when you said Part B, it's like, okay, well, what part of that do you mean?
I'm not old enough to know, but I know that people complain about it.
Yes. So here,
they have to pay for it. So
I'm going to tell
you. Help me out a little bit about
I'm going to explain something to you, right?
Okay.
I've been in the Medicare business for a long time.
Okay.
I just got interested in becoming a candidate, so my questions are different. And I ask you as an attorney, someone who's well educated, and you say you ain't got it yet. One person out of maybe 95 has understood what was going to happen with their insurance after they turn 65. I don't care if you call it Part A, Part B, Part F, you got to do a supplemental, all that jibba jabba. Right. You know how much it's going to cost you, because it's going to cost you some money. Do you know that?
Correct. It's going to cost you some money.
A lot of people don't know that.
Right. No,
and they don't know.
And you have to pay for it.
Yes.
You don't have an option. You have to opt in.
Yes.
When you get to the full retirement.
And you ask specific, because I'm going to answer it specific, because I know my business is important to people. And it's one of the reasons I'm running for office. There's no reason that you should turn 65 and not know that A is automatic and they're going to take $175 out your Social Security.
Right.
B is an option that covers some of the rest of the 80%. You didn't know it only covered 80%. You got to find something else to pay the other 20, right?
Right.
You know it. Most people, you know it because you looked it up. Most people don't.
Right.
And then you either got to prepay with a supplemental, which means you can pay about $2,800 a year and have no bills. You got your little supplemental card from Mutual Omaha,
Right.
whomever, and it's like a black card, the
Right.
old American Express. You got carte blanche to go everywhere. You
Right.
have no bills. Who can afford that? Not most people.
Right.
They go with the Advantage plan that doesn't have a premium, but you got recurring max out of pockets every year and copays. How many people knew that? 1 out of almost 95 people. 1. That's a disservice. And me and the young lady that I was talking to when we came in here, y'all do family law or state law. How many people should know that they should protect their homes or their estates by putting into some sort of conservatorship or a trust? But if they get cancer or get sick, they're gonna have to spend down. So when the state takes care of them, they don't have any assets.
Right.
How many people know that?
Yeah, not many. And, we don't have an absolute understanding of it. I don't. I've got a base understanding. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I definitely, if somebody needs to do a Medicaid,
One of the most
spend
important
down, I have to send them somewhere else.
One of the most important things that's going to happen after your working life is over is that decision that you make about your health insurance. And
Right.
people don't know anything. And my opponent is supposed to be the steward of good health care. These things are incongruent. Now,
Right.
and that gets to the kind of basis of what we're here for. You and I just had kind of a levity-filled conversation about something you, the attorney, didn't know about. So what do you think somebody's going to know about it living in
Right.
Farmville and Catawba County or out near Rockingham or all these other
Right.
places that have so been traditionally underserved?
Right.
Who's supposed to fill that gap?
Well, I guess it's a federal program. So should the feds or you think the state should
It's
fill
got to
it
be
out?
somebody. And if the state doesn't want to bankrupt its hospitals by fostering people who are ignorant about how to stay healthy, then I think that we would have a vested interest too, because Medicaid is a state operation. And we
Correct.
just took on 500,000 or 600,000 more people on Medicaid. What do you
Correct.
think the hospitals thought about that?
They were very happy.
They were very happy to take on all these sick people.
Yes, because they're getting paid, because they were treating those sick people and not getting paid. And several of the rural hospitals.
So I'm going to
under.
flip it and tell you the other side of the coin. It's also a business operation that their cost is based upon whether or not people are healthy. How many people over the last 10 years that we have denied federal money for the idea of federal austerity have lost limbs because their type 1 or type 2 diabetes was undiagnosed? Because North Carolina, the largest cause of death under 18 is para or prenatal. What's that from? Nutrition, lack of access to hospitals. So the hospitals are playing a game with the insurance company. So they're not necessarily that thrilled about it because now they got to negotiate what the insurance is going to pay them when Miss Wanda comes in, who's 56, who has 4 long-term problems. And she's about to lose her leg. She doesn't have home health care and she doesn't own anything. So again, there's some real deep problems within the industry that I've been in a long time with a lack of action and proactivity that have to do with all sorts of things. We need to be addressing at least,
Right.
and it's not happening in my
Right.
opinion.
So what do you think the state legislature can do?
Well, we are definitely underfunding rural people's ability to have nutrition, get educated properly, and to have medical services. We let the private industries of hospitals conglomerate around a lack of money-paying rural clients. Now that those hospitals are now gone, who's in the receivership of all those patients and all those buildings and all that money that's now being subsidized? The same large hospitals that were there over it in the first place. So in order to temper a commercial endeavor that's supposed to be surrounding what is a human art or just an expression of kindness through the giving of medicine or information about how you should eat while you're pregnant. So those things, altruism does not solve. It doesn't. We have to take care of our people. And if we temper a business endeavor because of it, so be it. That's our job.
Have family law questions? Need guidance to navigate legal challenges? The compassionate team at Breeden Law Office is here to help. Visit us at www.breedenfirm.com for practical advice, resources, or to book a consultation. Remember, when life gets messy, you don't have to face it alone.
All right. Well, let's talk to you a little bit about education. That's a big thing in the state government. It's
Yes.
the largest portion of the state budget.
Mm.
The legislature is proposing to, right now, as we record this in June of 2024, this episode probably will not run until either the end of July or into August. So we'll see what the legislature does if they do anything. But there is a proposal to fund the opportunity scholarships for everybody that has applied for one. An opportunity scholarship would allow any parent to get $4,000 or $5,000 to take their child to a private school if they want to. I've read that you are opposed to opportunity scholarships. Why?
So back in the early 90s, when I first started reading about the Edison School project in Philadelphia and watched it turn into kids sharing books and no janitors and them making no money and whatever, I knew that there was something rotten in the state of Denmark from the get-go. As far as the public coffers being taken from by people who are not tax-paying entities, I find to be kind of like on a principle base, sort of repugnant, okay? So there's a few levels about what education is supposed to be as serving the public good as opposed to the commercial endeavor of it. Because, in the last 40, 50 years, the thing that happens in America is you defund something, say it doesn't work, privatize it, and then we go from there. We can't treat schools the same way. So if you have a system that is basically unregulated, and we know that because curriculum is not dictated to any great extent, and I've read the charters of these schools, and the funding that goes to them, you can't tag it to an individual student. Then we don't even have the ability to follow up at the funds that are being out, which was 180 some million from the beginning, and now they're flaunting 460 million when we defunded the public entities from the get-go. And now we're going to take from them because we say there's a lack in it. And you go out, and I have personal experience with it because my daughter went to a charter school. Yes, my daughter, progressive liberal Matt, took his daughter to a charter school. You know why? Because I had enough money to be able to afford it. So this opportunity ain't opportunity for everybody. So just like in Texas, Arizona, and Wisconsin, and Michigan, over 75% of the people who receive those vouchers already go to private schools. So who are we really subsidizing? So let me kind of complete this for you. My daughter, because she's so exceptional, had the ability to go to this charter school where each one of the children was picked out. And when I went to honor roll, the A students were 26 and the AB students were 2. That was the whole class. They got to handpick everybody. But since they have to have less than 50% people who are actual teachers, their pay stinks, and they don't have a proper facility, after all these years that my girl's been there, none of those kids go to that school anymore that started off. None of them, including the people that chartered it. Some of them are still on the board. You get 6 people together, you sign out this simple form to the state and say, hey, you can get a lock and key company from Michigan. Yep, Wayne Huizingas owned Waste Management. All the lawsuits that followed his company, the National Heritage Academies that I had to look in to find out what is going on in this place. The people that started that school took their own kids out. So they still get vouchers, though, next time because they're going to Christian schools.
Right. So you don't like the opportunity scholarships, but
it shouldn't be called an opportunity scholarship.
Right. But you don't like the charter schools either, right?
They're not regulated enough for them to function properly, and they're just being used as a depository for people who are going from here to there to here to there. It's a false choice when none of them look. The state education, especially the Leandro case, is a prime example of how underfunding has paternalistically and historically affected these rural areas. You know that as somebody who's lived here for a long time. But if they're underfunding it from the first place, and they want to send it off to private industries who don't have to be accountable for the $7,500 that goes to each one of the students, gets sent up to Michigan, we don't know how it comes back, then how are we supposed to regulate? And all the fraud that's been perpetuated by these companies now, that these LLCs that are run through people's basement and churches and what have you, that's completely antithetical to the public institution of education for the sense of trying to be able to commoditize it in a way.
So we should close the charter schools in Johnston County.
We should have we should have a moratorium on the funding, on the vouchers, until they get that stuff straightened out. Because if you can't do simple accounting here in your own law office, then that ain't going to go. You can't follow each one of the cases that you go and the hours that you have billed to it, you're going to have a problem. And if the state legislator can't tell where these monies are going or even how it has to be spent, we got a problem.
So not for the opportunity scholarship, but we have there's over 120 charter schools in North Carolina right now, including 3 in Johnston County.
Yeah.
Leave those open, close them.
Well, we have to use them. Look, as I tell liberal Democrats that don't like the fact that my kids went because it was supposed to be something it turned to not to be, right? The horse is out the barn.
Okay.
It's out the barn.
So we keep the 3 we have. We just don't do more charter schools.
You need to do a moratorium until their curriculum meets the rigors the operations actually pass some efficacy test, and we're just sending out a check to somebody because you know that stuff has happened. We had a big case of it in Selma when they tried to find the school and they couldn't even find it, but they got 130 some grand. So you know that all we need to do is tighten the grip around what is allowed. My son had to come home in what they call asyncratic learning. Isn't that a PhD level word? You know why?
I remember
You
that.
know why? Because there wasn't enough certified teachers to deliver the end of year exam. So my son had to stay at home because the kindergarten, first and second grade teachers all were certified. So is that the kind of thing that we got to deal with because they've got such lax standards? I'm going to try to create a little closure on this particular thing. We are suffering from some of the best growth that exists on this planet. Barring the Emirates, United Emirates, and Dubai and all that. We got to have educated people to be able to work the jobs. We can't have this beautiful panacea here and you go 30 miles. You go 30 miles out of Greensboro, Asheville, Greenville, the Triangle, and Wilmington. You might as well be in Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, all states that I've been to. It's just depravity, poverty. We have to start addressing stuff with proper regulation. It just ain't happening now, in my opinion.
Okay. Let's talk about reproductive rights. I know you're not happy with the current state of where abortion is here in North Carolina. What would you do to regulate abortion? Right now, North Carolina makes it pretty much impossible to get an abortion after 12 weeks. That was a law that was passed about a year ago. What would you do with that law?
All right, because the company we are keeping right now, the fact that I have a 12-year-old in the room, right? I'm going to have to gild my language, right? But we see where the other states are going on a state level. And we are on a slippery slope, my friend, and you know it. So when we keep playing this ultimate brinksmanship that they're doing in that supermajority, you know there's going to be no exceptions for anything. And you're telling me the indignity that would be suffered by that little girl in Mississippi who's now 13, got an 8-month-old? What is that doing to that little girl psychologically? If we don't address the fact that these women are not just running around frivolously like it's 1965 and we're at Woodstock, and this is a leg spreading contest, that this is about fundamental individual women's rights that first world country principles are based on. I'm going to say this to you real quick, brother, and I'm going to wrap this little thought in my head. It amazes me that somebody can go to Haiti, Costa Rica, Africa, run the autoclave and sterilize, instruments and what have you, and they don't understand that these women, the difference that separates their third world from our first one is their individual rights, and it starts with your body. And if we're going to disassociate with ourselves from that association of women's fundamental rights, we have a problem. And I'm not going to have this connected to some, just people are having an abortion, but this is about family planning. Kids are expensive. People have problems in pregnancies all the time. And we're supposed to the point, the slippery slope. They're attacking in vitro fertilization. There are abortive medications that you can take. They're going for the whole 9 yards. So I got to protect some ground. So I ain't got to sit there and justifiably watching my little girl over there get pregnant.
So what age of a fetus
does that have relevancy to you? What I just said about what can happen to my preteen, that is something that's got to be treated as something relevant that we can come to an agreement on.
What age of a fetus does the state have some interest in that life, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, if you're going to sit there, I'm going to say that as soon as it becomes something and we're not providing proper medical provisions for people that want to be pregnant, or nutrition or education. See, like I got this whole thing in my mind. It's like, you can't even talk to kids now in schools. This idea of teachers being all perverting the children. And I'm correlating the things, brother. Just hang on. You're sitting there telling me the kids can't take sex education, learn about just the normal, anatomical, physiological reality of what it means to be a little boy and a little girl and what it means to interact. But you're telling me just at the precipice of that, we got to be responsible for the whole 9 yards? Take care of them the whole time. We got a different question, but this is reality. You're going to sit there and asking me scientific questions and about whether the electronic impulses within a zygote is a heartbeat. Man, I can't go down that road, but we got to have a common sense mid-ground, and I know where the other side is going.
So let's talk about the state tax rate. The current tax rate is being cut by the current legislature. There is a process that if the Republicans stay in charge, there will be no income tax probably in North Carolina in 2032. Do you agree with that?
Well, that's the biggest problem that we have. And I know it's all about investment and companies coming in and them feeling like this is a place that they can prosper and all this. But what does that mean for them to prosper? And then I'll encapsulate this in a meme. I saw it the other day. I thought it was really funny, but poignant. If the average wealth of an American is $64,000 until you take away 10 people, and then it's 53. Then you take away the 1%, it turns into like 48. When you take away the top 10%, it ends up being $33,000. So people who have got money are doing just fine. That's different than the question of, if we don't keep this low, these people are going to take the money and go elsewhere. Which side of the argument are we on? So you know that we're underfunding basic services here in North Carolina. You telling me that a 0.5% tax on the top income earners, or 1% that wouldn't provide for like full education, prenatal care, or food benefits for kids that ain't got one, that the Johnston County is doing now through school, you're going to keep lowering it?
So what should the tax rate be? It used to be 7.25. I think it's now down to 4.99. I mean, what would be a good tax rate?
Look, if I'm sitting there and we're talking about funding of things being not what it should be for the whole of the state, right? Because we're in such a bright, shiny part of North Carolina here. The rest of the people deserve the opportunity to be able to share with all this benefit. And I'm telling you, there is enough that draws these groups to here. They're not going to lose it because of some millage tax or some wealth tax that exists. America is actually like that. I mean, the damn Eisenhower tax rates, how we got the roads built, the Tennessee Valley Authority. This stuff doesn't happen altruistically, or the copper pipes in Flint, Michigan, or Jackson, Mississippi would have been fixed already. So of course we got to tax more, because what else are we doing? Underfunding stuff and then saying, oh, well, we need to do this. The next thing is going to be privatized is the DMV. Bet you $1. They're going to privatize the DMV because it works too slow and all this other stuff. That's the bend of the way that the legislator has been working. Let's just go and farm this work out.
All right. So anyway, I'll give you a sort of an open-ended question. Here will be the last question we asked before. Sure. The last question we always ask is, what do you love about Johnston County? But what are the top 2 or 3 things you're going to try to do if you get elected? We've talked about these main issues. I think we've covered them. If there's anything I missed, 60 seconds on those 2 or 3 things.
We could do this again with my opponent. But realistically, look, imbalance in legislative bodies is dangerous. When a legislative body wants to control how the Board of Election decides how the legislative body gets chosen, when we have intimate relationships between members of the Supreme Court and the legislative body, or the means to circumvent local municipalities' decisions about how you can clear-cut trees, or how many natural gas outlets you can put in the middle of Mebane, and the state legislator wants to take all that over. This just sounds like a perfunctory commercial endeavor. And we need to get back to a balance of that, because look, this is the way I put it. People love Donna White, and she's one of the first people that I met in Johnston County, and I actually kind of like her, but you cannot be innocent on a moving train. You can't be neutral on that train when it's heading south. And we see that it's heading south. So my determination is to bring some light to people, that we can have some good conversations and talk about each other's rationale and logic, and in betwixt the twain we will meet. So I'm looking forward to doing that. The other thing I'm looking forward to is raising my son George over there and my daughter Maddie, because this is one of the most beautiful parts of the country that I've ever been in, and I've been all across the United States. All our growth is good, it's new, it's beautiful. We got people moving from all over the place. The opportunities are just so enormous. So I just love it here.
Right. Well, and I guess the last question we ask everybody is, what do you love most about Johnston County?
Wow, we got big time stuff going on here with, still, barring the traffic, we need trains, a small town feel. It really is. People want things to be nice here. And I've met people from New York and Baltimore and California and whatever, and they all want things to be the way things are supposed to be here in Johnston County. And that's just relaxed. People are supposed to be able to live and have enough space. And so all those things that I would kind of yearn for are here, and they're here for other people. But there's some stuff that behind the veneer of how beautiful it is that we got to work on, that's within the soul of a community. And so I appreciate this opportunity to talk, because these outlets are not everywhere. So you're doing a service. And I appreciate it.
I appreciate that. Well, one thing that would, candidate for NC House 26, for coming on to the Best of Johnston County podcast. He will be on your ballot in November. He is running against the incumbent Donna White. Anyway, we do appreciate y'all listening to this episode of Best Johnston County Podcast. Feel free, like we said earlier, like, subscribe, or follow so you'll know future episodes of Best Johnston County Podcast. Leave us a 5-star review down below as well. I guess I forgot to ask, how can people get in touch with your campaign? I forgot.
Matt Wood, MATTWOOD, NC26. I've got a presence on Ballotopedia where my platform is articulated. And no matter who you vote, go participate, have the conversations. We're not that different from each other.
All right. Sounds good. We will thank Matt for coming on. And until next time, I'm your host, Jonathan Breeden.
That's the end of today's episode of Best of Johnston County, a show brought to you by the trusted team at Breeden Law Office. We thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to sharing more interesting facets of this community next week. Every story, every viewpoint adds another thread to the rich tapestry of Johnston County. If the legal aspects highlighted raise some questions, help is just around the corner at www.breedenfirm.com.